Yay! Thanks and praise. Welcome back, you fabulous dissidents. I have quite a menagerie on offer tonight. And I'm not talking about Nietzsche menage. All right, yeah, I got a lot of fun on the roster for this episode. I'm going to put a few announcements out. For one, I want to give huge thanks, gratitude, and magnification to my brother Arick, who has reflected some fascinating correspondences from my Nine Muses project. And so, where I am taking things tonight at the end of this installment is very much in gratitude and honor of my buddy Arick. Big love, champion. Big love. I can't even tell you how much you lit me up. He actually made this observation a couple months ago, and it was too hot to handle. It was too hot to handle. I had to cool my jets, and I finally made room in my immense heavens to integrate what Arick has blessed us all with. So, big respect, Arick. Can't even say enough. And I've put a request out to Arick, and if he is so inclined, we might be ever so fortunate for him to give me permission to put his contact information at the bottom of this episode. Might not be out right away. I'll add it once I get his permission. But yeah, he is a brilliant, brilliant soul. And so this episode eventually might have contact information for our brother. He is a brilliant astrologer, and he does personal readings. And I know I have certain loyalties to K Libricana, but hey, it's a vast world, and I think our buddy Arick, yeah, he definitely deserves some reciprocity. That's what's up. So I'm going to move into the endocrine system on the Enneagram. And this is a rough draft. And keep in mind that I am not an endocrinologist. But when I studied Robert Sapolsky, every word he said about the endocrine system mapped out flawlessly on the Enneagram. And it was driving me a little bonkers that he doesn't believe in free will. And his entire narrative that he's building a career out of seems to be almost, it's not plagiarism. It's not plagiarism. That's not what I'm saying. But there's nothing that comes out of Robert Sapolsky that isn't already laid out on the Enneagram. And he's trying to tell you, you have no free will. That is where I draw the line. That's where I draw the line. Homie is way off base. And he's looking a lot like Radagast. He looks so much like Radagast, it's sick. And his biography, it's not just looks like. Hold on, let me say this. It's not just that he looks like Radagast. His biography is Radagast. And I can't even speak to it more than that. But if you study him and his biography, he's the guy that really proliferated the toxoplasmosis narrative. Radagast. I can't even speak to it. It tells its own story. I can't even pull down the significance of that. And I bet that fool has never even does it. Well, maybe he digs on Tolkien, but it's amazing that he's like a living embodiment of a Tolkien character. Now let's think of it this way: Tolkien comes out first. Sapolsky makes his career and his impact on academia, and then they make Tolkien to look like Robert Sapolsky, right? If we're going to demystify it. It would have to come out that way. Otherwise, there's some crazy egregoric entanglement between Sapolsky and Radagast. But one thing that's kind of contradictory is I don't think Radagast would be would be a naysayer on free will. I think that's the opposite. Maybe that's the poison pill that's going down with that. So, the endocrine system and the Enneagram. Big love, Arick. All right, but before I get there, I have quite a few headlines that need to be disseminated. Quite a few. This is going to be a long one. One of which is, and also I want to say, there is something really fascinating happening around the Slick Dissonant Project, where apparently I talk about a topic or a subject in the zeitgeist, and it's only 24, 48 hours later that it's coming back real heavy in the headlines. I'm talking smack about Rachel Maddow, the Dow Made Ritual, and the next day she's blowing up everybody's info channels with the dropping of anchors. They're dropping anchors. They're dropping emotional anchors. Don Lemon and Tucker getting canned on the same day is almost, Don Lemon is a spokesperson. He's a rhetorician. He's in the number one position, Polyhymnia, the muse of rhetoric. He gets canned on the same day as Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson is he's gonzo. He's gonzo. He's like a derivative of Hunter S. Thompson. And they canned him almost exactly a year after the trucker convoy, which was, I knew that was happening right where Pegasus and Grus and Cygnus are all popping off in Aquarius. And it was a 1 year cycle before the trucker convoy and the alarms of the horns and the Frosty the Snowman and the white fragility of the entire psyop is rooted in the emotional dropping of the anchor that is Tucker Carlson. And if I had to give him a card, it would not be the same as Lemon. I would say he is more... Oh, he's Empress. More of the Empress card. Because of the goose and the swan and the Pegasus of it all. So I find this so fascinating that they're dropping emotional anchors. And Rachel Maddow, people are so pissed about how much money she's making. Well, I don't think they're seeing the negative space. The hush money that she receives is directly one-to-one proportional to the information she's not telling us. She's getting paid not to say things. And so while people are like, wow, what's she getting paid so much for? She's getting paid not to talk. Look close at the Aeon card. Aeon card, Hippocratic Oath. I'm going to talk about that Hippocratic Oath real quick. The Hippocratic Oath has been thrown to the wind ever since the 60s. The Rockefellers came in, and you can't find a standardized oath for the doctors anymore. Nobody's taking oaths anymore, so nobody is professional. You're not professional because you haven't professed, you haven't taken the oath. There's no oath takers out there. And you go to different academies and universities and see what they're using for Hippocratic Oath, they're just making it up. There's nothing standardized about it. So look up the old Hippocratic Oath, and I read that, and I'm like, nope, I don't approve. I do not approve. It's talking about Hail Asclepius and all the Greek gods, and I will always remember to take care of the nepotistic forefathers and take care of the families that gave me the title of doctor before all other things. It's in the original oath. And so while I'm saying it's not good that there is no standardized oath, when I look at what the standardized oath used to be, it's not something that I would take comfort in if it was in place today. And there's something really fascinating around the Hippocratic Oath and, yeah, I'm going to say it, checking the testicles of children that the doctors did. When I was a kid, homie cups my balls, tells me to turn my head to the side and cough. I said, what's this about? He says, we're checking your marbles. Checking your marbles. That was cute. That was cute. I was like, I got marbles? It was an anatomy lesson. But there's something nefarious about turn your head and cough. There's something dark and nefarious about turn your head and cough. In the underworld, that is a symbol for give me some hush money. Hippocratic Oath. Turn your head and cough is to get paid on the side. What's fascinating is the symposium is called the touchstone. It's called the test. And I am starting to suspect that there is a fascinating lineage of knowing that is communicated through touch. And it is spoken of in Plato's Symposium. Communicating information through touch. And I myself, as a massage therapist, I found that verse most provocative. And I know a lot of people are provoked because they think it's gay. But personally, I could almost, I can feel people's life. I can feel people's life when I touch them as a massage therapist. And if a person that I'm giving a massage to, if they take themselves through their trauma, they take me along with them. And I'm not going to elaborate on that, but I will say that I found that aspect of the Plato Symposium when Socrates comes in to talk to Agathon, and Agathon is like, I want that idea that you had out on the portico. Whatever that is, you give me that. And Socrates says, oh, if only ideas could be transmitted through touch as water is transmitted through a wick from one cup to another. And then they just breeze on through like, yeah, too bad that doesn't exist. And I'm reading it and I'm saying, it's existed for so long. It has existed for so long. So transmission of knowing through touch is really far out. And I'm thinking about it in the context of checking all the kids' marbles and doing a bribery ritual. It's a bribery ritual. Turn your head and cough. It's so fascinating. Yeah, pretty dark too. Pretty dark. But with all these things, as a healer, nothing dark about it. But a lot of people, because of our denial of erato, they take it hyperbolic. They go hyperbolic around these sensitivities. Some people's sensitivities can be harnessed for good, and some people's sensitivities make them crawl out of their own skin at the thought. So, yeah. That actually wasn't part of my plan to share, but I think it is really crucial to consider that when you read something that and it makes you uneasy, maybe it's talking to somebody of a different chemistry makeup. Not everybody's going to see that in the symposium. A lot of people are going to get all gay about it. All right. All right. Headlines recently. Slick seems to keep talking about stuff on the episode that turns into big news drops only 24, 48 hours later. Starting to think I should be real careful about what I say. So yeah, I've been buzzing on Rachel Maddow, the Dow Maid ritual, and it was only 48 hours later they're dropping anchors. They're dropping emotional anchors. So Yeah, I already went through Don Lemon, Tucker Carlson, and now Rachel Maddow. She talking about an emotional anchor. But a long time ago, she had a spell of weeping in public on the camera, talking about kids in cages. And Rachel weeping is a direct uh, uh, reference to the Bible. I think it's in Ecclesiastes. I don't have the chapter and verse. I'll bring a graphic up where it's a story about Rachel weeping for her children, and uh, the children were not able to cry out for the other children because the children were not. Is the end of that verse. And I'm thinking, oh, that's interesting because these kids in cages, she's hyperbolically over exaggerating. They probably are not, at least not in the context that she's trying to sell it. But then I'm thinking about the nocebo effect. Is the verse in the Bible actually about women are actually able to express full pregnancy, 9 months, full pregnancy, and turns out there's no baby in the belly at all. And that is part of the nocebo effect. I think it has a scientific name. I don't have that. But I'm just calling it the nocebo baby. And isn't that a fascinating synchro-mystic tether that old Dao-made ritual is, I think, always instilling, conveying, transmitting? It is potent AF. So we're going to call her the Dao-made ritual nocebo effect. That's pretty much summing up her entire telos. Yeah, Gozer the Gozerians, Dao-made ritual nocebo effect. um, so I wanted to also talk about recalls. There's so many recalls through the past week, and the total recall of it all. Uh, I think that is a prompt. It's a lamed designed to subtly instill a potent nostalgia. And in the subtext of the potency of that nostalgia, a great amount of our predictive programming from childhood is in the subtext. Every time the word recall is circulated, it's also a nostalgia spell to send our consciousness back to so much. Inception protocols. I have a new term. Big up Zeralath. It was his suggestion to use the phrase inception protocols as opposed to predictive programming or revelation of the method. I'm like, man, we need more and more potent words. But just recently I found the word uh, promulgation. Promulgation. It implies a hammer, which is a Masonic tool, but that says it all in one word. I guess we could say promulgation protocols. That's something that I'm really happy to share and pay forward. And because I'm making these claims about the Justice League, that Trump has put together the Justice League, I had to go and rewatch that horrible cinematic deposit. And I was so right. I was so right, folks. If you go back, watch the scene where Superman, I think he goes um, to the wall. It's like where all the veterans' names are commemorated forever on black stones, and he's been resurrected, and he's gone to the wall of the fallen soldier. Maybe that's what it's called. And he's at that memorial up on a stage in a green field, wherever that is located, and he has not spoken yet. And sure enough, his Justice League team that resurrected him, they show up at the steps, and the cyborg guy, who is basically Kanye West, Yahweh Skynet, Kanye West, he can't control his bazooka arm, and he shoots it at the Ubermensch, and the Ubermensch dodges back and to the left, back and to the left. Is Notoricon for battle, Battl, back into the left. Yeah. So yeah, he dodges the bullet just like old Chumpster, the promulgation. And then he pummels cyborg guy with laser beams. And there's a cop car that gets zapped. So the notice has been served. We've been served. Promulgation. Fascinating word. So I'm not going to clip the video, but I do recommend people actually go watch that crap. Go watch that crap because you can count on it. They're going to unpack every dime that they invested in seeding our presumptions. All right, nostalgia recalls. In recent videos, I was clowning about old MacDonald had a farm, and on that farm he shot some guys, E-I-E-I-O. And the myocardial infarction picture had a lot of curious things seeding the the apron. And I noticed RFK is so dark. He's so tan. He's absurdly tan. He almost looks like the only non-pasty in the room. And sure enough, same week, people are talking about Steve Bannon. How could Steve Bannon be so tan? One thing, just a quick note, the tanning shed. Uh, uh, Matthew Thomas Crook was up on the tanning shed in wearing tan when the shot was taken. All of that is hailing to Wilkes Booth, who was hunted down in a tanning shed. So there is that. However, I just came because of this research. I learned about Addison's disease, and apparently JFK is the most famous case of Addison's disease, and it comes from an adrenaline defect. I ain't even gonna go there. I don't have to. It's a deficit in your adrenals that causes them to have extra melatonin that makes them tan. Sometimes isolated locations. However, it does seem to be a little nod to wink to the inside click. So yeah, Addison's disease, and sure enough, if you have Addison's disease, it causes a need for more salt. They need extra sodium intake. And so I'm looking at that McDonald's myocardial infarction image with all the sodium on that table. All that sodium on the table. So fascinating. So I thought I would share that, and I might as well just kind of decode. Steve Bannon is QAnon, y'all. I don't know if you guys are still wondering, but yeah, 1 + 7 = 8. Steve 8 anon. 8 looks like the B. 8 looks like the B. 1 looks like the row. But yeah, Steve 8 anon. And also, when they brought Luke Skywalker back, Mark Hamill sure looks a shite ton like our boy Steve Bannon all of a sudden, perfectly. And then, Anakin Skywalker doesn't put up a fight. He doesn't take a stand. He just lets Kylo Ren put the lightsaber through him because he was a optical promptitude, y'all. And the real Steve Bannon is back in the cave, basking in the sun, basking in the double sun. All right. So, Putin. Let's do some Putin. Putin on the risk. So there was a Agenda 2025 magazine cover. Was that Economics or I forget? The Economy magazine. And it's this big, nefarious Saturnian death threat image. The Borg has arrived. It's really fascinating. And Putin gets on the horn and starts telling everybody we're gonna retaliate. We plan to retaliate. And the entire Putin broadcast just harmonizes so well with Spaceballs. Riding around in the Winnebago, Wagner, Winnebago. Wagner means wagoneer. Hails to the chariot card and the homunculus. In Faust, Wagner was the first one to create the homunculus. So I'm looking at the Winnebago scene with Pizza the Hut making threats on this bounty hunter. Star Lord? Is it Star? Is his name Star Lord? Anyways. And the Pizza the Hut sitting next to a guy who looks like Max Headroom, who looks just like Vladimir Putin. Promulgation protocols, y'all. So yeah, Pizza the Hut and whoever the Max Headroom next to him was says, what is it? Star Lord says, "What if we don't pay you?" And he says, "If you don't pay us, then the hut is gonna bring takeout to you," something along those lines. Yeah, and we seem to be recogitating these implications from our childhood on the week of recalls. All this recall sending you back into this nostalgia, which is also simultaneously an infantilization spell, which is a huge word circulating all over the place. So yeah, I'm finding so many answers to the things happening today are resonating to aspects of my childhood, which actually gives me a increased sense of maturity to disambiguate them at this stage in my life and to help others see that these patterns were put into our psyche at that very supple age. But then now there's something really wild going on with Putin. I don't really have a card for Putin. If I had to, I'd put him at the Tower card number 7, if I had to, because of the Jupiterian aspect, planetary correspondence. Uh, uh, and he is very Epicurean. It's a pretty strong fit. He's a number 7 for sure. Um, but I want to buzz on some of the signaling around Biden as he pulled the usual suspects Kaiser Sose speech, telling everybody that we just went through the greatest American experiment, and that's a fact. It's not hyperbolic. I misspoke in my last episode. So I went down a whole research around hyperbolic, but I'm not going to talk about that. But in that speech, he's leaving the stage forever. And he was known for taking many falls on that stage. He was constantly falling on the stage. I'm looking at who has been the hermit card in the past. Who's the grand poobah of all hermit cards in the zeitgeist? And it is no question. It is Gandalf. Gandalf means battle wolf. And Gandalf, he fell. He went through his final fall when he made a standoff with the Ragnar. Did I say that right? I don't know. The Ragnar, the big fire demon that he's, "Thou shalt not pass." And then he gets swooped off his perch on the bridge and goes through his fall, and his last words are, "Run, you fools." And that's even a Mandela effect. So people have actually gone back, recall, they've gone back to check if they changed the information. The recall, Mandela effect. They're dropping anchors. They're dropping anchors. Run, you fools is an anagram for a lot of things. A lot of things. One of which is old UFOs run you, or old UFOs are in you. You don't even have to anagram it. It's got the word UFO in it. And the Hermit card is the Hermit card and the Moon card. If you read, what's his name? Kenneth Arnold. If you read Kenneth Arnold's account of the UFOs and you hold the Moon card and the Hermit card in your hand as you read his description of the first UFOs ever that were flying discs, which was a sport back in the day, flying discs. Schopenhauer had his poodle to help. It was a game hound that would help him if he's shooting birds. His game hound would hunt them down for him. So yeah, Kenneth Arnold has the word. His name has the word ether. Ken ether. Ken ether. Arnold has the word ether in his name. Read his accounts and hold the Thoth deck and the Thoth Hermit and Moon card in your hands and just watch him describe these tarot cards. Watch him describe the tarot cards as his vision of the UFOs. So Gandalf gets swooped off the stage. He goes through a fall. That's the end of the Grey, Gandalf the Grey. And after that, his resurrection, he becomes Gandalf the White. Frickin' Whitey. Whitey is always keeping us down. Whitey is always suppressing information. YouTube, Whitey. Pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. So that Hermit card is just, it's a gift that keeps on giving. I'm looking at the picture of Putin's nukes. Hermit card. Bingo. Hermit card all the way. And the day before, they're talking about bombshell headline of the January 6 people. And it's even talking about take cover or coverage. I don't know. I'll bring the graphic up. It's just interesting how these headlines connect. Yeah, I'm lucky that I don't have a full-size corkboard, or the entire room would be connected in a web of implication. Also, the G20 summit is taking place in Rio de Janeiro. And I happen to believe that the aspect of the Odyssey where Odysseus lands on his final destination, I want to say it's maybe this penultimate spot, because Odysseus goes through the Enneagram in reverse. You can check my work. Go look up Michael Goldstein. Is basically laying out that Odysseus is going in reverse through the Enneagram. And I think it's right between his last stop and going home to Ithaca, coming to the center, where Neptune is really pissed because he has more gold than even the spoils of Troy. And Neptune is telling Zeus, I know you said I can't kill this guy because you already took a vow to commit his destiny, but please let me F with this dude. And Zeus is like, all right, have at it. So he throws a second rock to sink his riches and his wealth. And there are so many aspects of just that part of the story that are pointing at Rio de Janeiro. If you know the skyline of Rio de Janeiro, the entire Odyssey chapter is substantiating the vision of Bom Jesus dos Navegantes standing up on that hillside, looking down on the river of money. He had more spoils than all of Troy. I could go on and on about how the telemetry data of Odysseus is on a larger scale than Scholastica wants you to even imagine. So the G20 summit is landing at the location in the Odyssey where Neptune sinks Odysseus's boat with the second rock. So I'll bring some graphics on that. And then another thing, I'm not sure if I was talking about this on the Slick Dissident channel or if I was talking about it on my Telegram group, but when I was young, I was at a speech competition in Charleston, South Carolina, and it was taking place, it was the state competition taking place at the SS Yorktown aircraft carrier, which is the origin of the Y2K scare, because I read a book called Zero, The Biography of a Dangerous Idea. I highly recommend that book. And the opening lines of the book are talking about how the SS Yorktown was dead in the water because a zero had slipped into the code and shut down all of the computers. And the SS Yorktown was dead in the water. They had to get tugboats to pull it into harbor and put it into retirement. And they actually, the Apollo 13 capsule was placed on that aircraft carrier as kind of a museum. At that time, that's what it was serving as. I don't know where the Apollo 13 capsule is today. But when I was giving my speech, I walked right through by the Apollo 13 capsule on the SS Yorktown. And then I grow up and read this book about the zero, this dangerous idea. But and I do believe that that was the Gnostic seed of Y2K. But my buddy Polymathin, big ups Polly, he brings up that zero is, or no, maybe it was PK. Sorry if I'm conflating my sources. One of my homies from the Whiteboard Brotherhood brought it up that zero is the design of the kamikaze planes that the Japanese used to use. And so the phrase, the SS Yorktown was dead in the water because of a zero, is actually a trigger to the ancestors. It resonates with traumatic truth on a fascinating, deep level. And I'm wondering if the whole thing is a fugazi. If the whole thing is a fugazi, and they're actually just amplifying the triggers from past generations, just like using the term flying saucer back when people were into skeet shooting and they used to call it flying saucers. Well, they slowly erode that term and then they start calling it skeet shooting instead. Same thing with this with the zeros taking out an aircraft carrier. I realized that this little lie has this huge amplification. Plus, you throw in the fact that the Apollo 13 mission was on the same boat. Man. So yeah, zeros are kamikaze planes that took out many aircraft carriers. It's a wild shit coding of a deeper truth. But I want to say one more thing. If I know that the kamikaze planes, as they're dive bombing aircraft carrier, do you know what they're saying to themselves? Do you know what they're saying? Rin, pyo, do, sha, kai, jin, ritsu, zai, zen. That's what they're saying. Their last words. Pretty potent, pretty potent. Trunculus. Y'all, if you haven't seen my show with Juan, go check out the show I did with Juan. We gave birth to the tragedy and takeover, and the Trunculus spell was completely unfurled. And it took us the whole episode to get to the very end, and we were both really tuckered. And I feel that we didn't amplify the discovery that the last thing Juan says, the very last thing he says as we're walking off, and signing off, he says, "Holy crap! There's a Trumplar 16 nebula or effect in the baby homunculus that is inside of the homunculus nebula that is inside Eta Carinid quadrant of the sky that rains down meteor showers every January 20th, 21st, is the peak of this prolonged window of meteor showers coming down from the baby Jesus homunculus. That's the date that old Chumpster's getting inaugurated. It's augury week because, sure enough, it's right there in stride with Puxatawny Phil. And, old Chumpster getting his Superman promulgation spell was right there in Groundhog's Day. And people play the tape over and over and over like Groundhog's Day. Really wild stuff. So yeah, check out our Trunculus revelation. And it is really, really wild that the Ephesus creed of the Nicene Creed of Ephesus was put in place at that January 20th, 21st mark, where the homunculus Eta Carinid is raining down every year like clockwork. Pretty wild. Then I'm just going to drop this charcuterie weave. Excuse me. So I had a wild thought form, a logismoi, on the shelf. And it had to do with the JFK, the footage that everybody watched over and over like Groundhog's Day the footage is called the Zapruder footage. And it always just kind of rung in my ear in a weird way that it's the Zapruder footage of a sharpshooter uh, taking shots and on JFK. And we happen to know that that film was, now we know that that film was sliced and diced and chopped up and put together just ever so delicately to be served up for communion to the masses. And then I'm just kind of thinking how sharpshooter and zapruder and the correspondence between shooting and shooting was all kind of woven in. And then I find out that the most obscure readings that Friedrich Nietzsche was obsessed with charcuterie. Charcuterie. And then I look at the JFK as a Dionysian communion that everybody is consuming this killing of the king ritual like a charcuterie board. I think about Jackie rolling off the back of the charcuterie board with this exploded brain on the board. She looks like a rolled up sausage. Nietzsche he wanted to be Polish. He wanted to be Polish. He thought his bloodline had Polish roots. Did we participate in a Dionysian cannibalistic Nietzsche consumption of the nihilistic spirit when JFK was killed? Zapruder, sharpshooter, charcuterie, and then chaperone. They were chaperoned by all those bodyguards, and the entire footage was chaperoned by the CIA from start to finish. It was chaperoned, and there's even an aspect of wearing a hat is also relates to the word chaperone. So yeah, I'll bring that graphic up. And what this is kind of like a strange formula of taking all of these phonetic correspondences that just sound like they have no, that they're unrelated, but somehow they get baked into a labyrinth of significance that is the kind of thing that'll leave you chasing your tail if you think too long about it. So yeah, I just brought that one down off the shelf. Thought I would share it here. And then, wow, I really did. I covered pretty much everything. I'm going to talk about the endocrine system, y'all. Give thanks and praise to our brother Arick. I'll bring a graphic forward with some of the information that he reflected from the 9 Muses. And it just lit me up. It still does. It still does. How correspondent the 9 Muses are to the general understanding of what the endocrine system is. And I know there's people out there who are like, I will believe in the endocrine system. Cool. Let's have some fun anyway, all right? So, Arick put these correspondences together. I'm not sure where he got this from, but if I find the sources, I'll let everybody know. If Arick gets back to me on where he drummed this up from, I'm still waiting to hear back from him. But there are essentially 9 crucial chemicals that are used in the endocrine system. Did I talk about Robert Sapolsky looking like Radagast? Did I already talk about that? I'm not sure. I hope I did. So Robert Sapolsky is an endocrinologist and an authority way above and beyond me. Big respect. But homie doesn't believe in free will. I got a problem with that. And everything that homie says, with all of his expertise, everything he says about the endocrine system and the human experience, it maps out on the Enneagram perfect. Even the frontal, dorsal, and the ventricles of the brain. He's literally laying out the map of the Symposium in so many ways when he talks, and he's not talking about the Enneagram, but everything he says fits onto this, which makes sense because if it's true, then it will pass the test no matter what modality you apply it to. So yeah, Robert Sapolsky, he owes the Enneagram an entire career of claims. So yeah, he does not believe in free will, and essentially, like, just because he can name all your internal mechanics, he thinks that he can thereby dismiss the free will of the human experience. And I beg to differ. I beg to differ. But it is a worthy cause to prove him wrong. So I'm going to rip through the correspondences of the chemicals of the endocrine system as they articulate the essence of these 9 muses in the most rewarding fashion. So Polyhymnia is the first muse, the muse of rhetoric. She often has her finger to her lips. She knows the Hippocratic Oath. She knows when not to talk. There's a lot of wisdom in what you choose not to do. So, also, number 1 is a perfectionist reformer with the shadow of wrath, remedial virtue of wisdom. And Polyhymnia is responsible for sacred hymns and introspection. I really love that one. And her endocrine chemical would be melatonin. And this is correspondent heavily to the circadian rhythm. And what gets me is that the true master of rhetoric can actually syncopate the signs and the symbols and the rhythm of what they say to stimulate the suprachiasmatic nuclei of the nexus point in the mind that is responsible for the circadian rhythm. And so a good rhetorician might be able to syncopate their story to the circadian rhythm to entrain belief way beyond my simple words. Next, Cleo, responsible for history, memory, and legacies. Oxytocin, very correspondent to a sense of resolve or resolution. I actually don't have a cheat sheet to read off some of the descriptions of the, but I'll bring up the graphic. And you can kind of read the descriptions as I go through. Next, Euterpe, the lyrical poetry, and also she is the muse of music, as music was thought to be the most highest form of remedy, of healing in the healing arts. This was Eryximachus in the Symposium. Number 2 was Pausanias. Number 1 is Phaedrus. Pausanias. 3 is Eryximachus at first until he gets switched out. But the corresponding chemical, endorphins. Which have a lot to do with release, letting go of. Very much like the switch between Eryximachus and Aristophanes. These endorphins are crucial. And also there's a lot of people are thinking about dolphins. That's kind of wild because for many reasons. Because Raphael defeated Asmodeus in the Book of Talbot using the burning of cod liver to scare Asmodeus away. There's so many things that, there's so many reasons why the dolphins and the dolphins should be here. And then Aristophanes, the 4th speaker, he had to hold his breath, tickle his nose with a feather, and drink water to get rid of his hiccups that he inherited from the hypocrisy. Dopamine. His muse would be Thalia, the muse of comedy. And dopamine is responsible for pleasure, reward in the brain, and satisfaction. And between endorphins and dopamine, there is a dynamic interplay, just like them switching seats in the Symposium. It's so packed with meaning. And for one, a lot of people might think, oh, this means that the Greeks understood the endocrine system better than we think. And that might be the case, but I'm of the mind that Plato's Symposium, the Plato's Republic has is not in its original format, and I think it went through a potent reformation with the Medicis. I think that Ficino, uh, Rodrigo Borgia, Caesar Borgia, and Machiavelli, I think we're looking at their handiwork. So it is more likely that the Medicis understood the endocrine system very well. Next, Melpomene. She is the muse of tragedy, and um, I'm giving her cortisol. Oh, no, I'm not. Our buddy Arick did. Big love, Arick. All respect. Um, uh, Made the correspondence of tragedy to cortisol. And one thing that came up in this thread is these endocrine chemicals generate feelings and oftentimes emotion. And that was kind of a hang up for me because we're out of the feeling group and now we're in the thinking group. These endocrine chemicals, they do generate an emotion, but I don't think the word emotion is impeccable when we're considering how chemicals stimulate our internal mechanics. So cortisol is described as having increased awareness of intense emotion, sorrow, and catharsis. That is so profound for Melpomene. That's perfect for the number 5 observer with the shadow of greed or avarice and the remedial virtue of temperance. Cortisol. Man, I can't even say enough. There's something else, another part of the project that I'm going to bring up in an upcoming episode is our buddy Black Sheep did a full run through on the Latin terms for the 7 deadly sins. And Melpomene, the Latin word for avarice was cupidity. And that's just really interesting. Yeah. So cortisol, Melpomene, number 5, highly correspondent to each other. Super exciting. Number 6 is Erato. She was the empty seat in the Symposium as as they were speaking of her children. Her children are the erotes, and Eros is the alpha erote, and Eros was the subject of the entire conversation. So yeah, her effect was the topic at hand, but her seat was an empty seat. And Socrates says it 3 times. There's nobody between me and Agathon. There is a nothing. There's a big absent gap between Socrates and Agathon, this number 6 seat. And so she is the muse of love poetry, intimacy, and sensuality. And in Arick's assessment, he put forward estrogen and testosterone, and as the different strokes for different folks is kind of the point there. That this is how the babies are made, the chemistry between estrogen and testosterone. But I'm going to make a little executive maneuver here. I'm going to leave estrogen in the number 6 position because the ladies were sent out of the Symposium. And so estrogen was absent in the nothing space, in the negative space. I'm going to put testosterone under Socrates because he was sprawled out on the fear nature. He was sprawled out on the fear nature. And he was covering up, he was occulting a great many things. And when he does his speech, he is the one who invokes and does a ventriloquism seance on Diotima Montanea. He's the only one who brings the spirit of the female into the room. I'm giving him testosterone. I'm going to put that on the number 7. But his muse is Calliope. She is responsible for epic poetry and inspiration. And so I'm going to give Socrates the testosterone, and I'm going to say, the Symposium is called the test. It's called the touchstone. I'm thinking about that doctor cupping the balls of all the children. Is there something profound being transmitted under the underneath the nefariousness of touching children's genitals? I wonder. I wonder. That Hippocratic oath. What are they not telling us? Testosterone, the test, the symposium, the touchstone of all culture. Adrenaline, number 8, terpsichore, the muse of dance, the epitome of sympathetic magics. And wouldn't you know, she's responsible for dance and physical expression, and adrenaline is the keystone to the sympathetic nervous system. All of these correspondences, there is so much more to say. I only have so much time. But this really hits home on the adrenochrome narrative. And why does Bannon have a tan? Why does RFK have such a heavy tan? Is it because of Addison's disease? Very likely, very likely. Number 9, final, last but not least, Plato he's absent from the symposium, but he rounds it out. He gives shape to the story, and it's in his name. So he wasn't at the symposium, but it is his baby. He's the author. His muse will be Urania, as she is the muse of astronomy, geometry, and shapes. He gives shapes to the story, and serotonin regulates mood, balance, peace, and order. Number 9 is a balanced peacekeeper with the shadow of sloth, remedial virtue of diligence, perseverance, stick-to-itiveness, maybe solitude might also be intrinsic to this. And it's basically the number 9 personality type is basically reading off the description of what serotonin does. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Now, one thing that I experienced as I went to study the endocrine system is there is so much more to know. There's so much more to learn. Robert Sapolsky, he would have way more to say because if you study Robert Sapolsky, which I do recommend, he will tell you that people are misconstruing what these chemicals are doing for people and what they serve in the collective. For example, I think he says that, what is it, cortisol. I think he talks about cortisol, that they're all misunderstood. And that there's like this profane presumption about these 9 endocrine chemicals. There's a profane presumption about what they mean. And he says that there's a great amount of nuance that is not up to date. The public is working on an outdated system, and he's trying to update people's understanding of these chemicals and the way that they bring us together. They are in our midst. Much like the chorus was moved off the stage and sent into the crowd, much like Jesus tells us he is amongst us. All right. I am still waiting for my episode with Emily Moyer to come out. Could be any day now. And also the Occult Rejects. They had me on last week, and we went hard in the paint, y'all. It was placenta all night long. It was so much fun. So big love to Emily Moyer, my buddy Nick from the Occult Rejects, also Headless, and the other 2 fellas who were on the show with us, who I forget their name. I'm sure they would forgive me that mistake. But yeah, big love to everybody who's been on the ride so far. I'll be sending out the messages when those release onto the airwaves. So definitely expect more to come on the Enneagram and the endocrine system. It is so edifying to consider that, for one, that our ancestors were, regardless of what time frame we're talking about, that they were this cunning, they were this clever. And it's kind of a compliment to our interpretive prowess to see so much depth so far back even if it was in the 1300s, 1400s printing press time. Even then, it is really impressive to consider how wisely these truths were packaged into stories and how we are somehow able to unpack them here today on such a potent level. Yeah. Arick, you blow my mind, bro. You blow my mind. And I just want to thank you again for paying this forward, because it really, really enriches my worldview to the max. And I hope it does for everybody else. So, yeah, big love and respect, everybody. Yeah, check out slickdissident.com. Come get some merch. Get your hoodies. It's getting cold. And I really I don't think I have any episodes coming forward in the immediate future. Oh, the Juan show. If you didn't catch me on the one-on-one where we gave birth to the Trunculus, go check that out. It's in my Slicks Orbital Go Live Vanting tab is where I'm going to be storing up all my works on other channels. And if you watch the Trunculus episode, just hang with us to the end, because the good stuff really is in the last 15 minutes, when the entire uh, baby homunculus meteor shower on the Nicene Creed of Inauguration Day all comes together. Yeah, a lot of vast and profound threads. All right, everybody. Big love and respect.